Hello, and welcome to another episode of Grow the Game. We are here with Derek Jackson, co-founder. What else do you want the people to know about you?
This will be my 6th year coaching. I've been at both small school and big school. I've coached middle school. I didn't learn to play volleyball until I was 22-ish. So I didn't have a background of playing before I coached. And like she said, I started to grow the game.
So what you mentioned that you have been both in big school and in small school. What are big differences that you feel like?
There's a lot of differences. I think the ones that you would see the most is competition level for one. And just not necessarily at the tops. I think some of the top 3A, 4A teams can compete with 5A and 6A teams, and you see that when they match up. But you also see kind of the mid-level teams from both 3A, 4A, and 5A, 6A being a lot better the higher you go up. So you see competition levels. I definitely think resources that are available for coaches and admin and just everyone involved. Resources is a big difference.
So you've spent some time, like you said, in both small school 4A and big school 6A, but you also went to two different programs that didn't have great success beforehand, both at the smaller and the larger level. So how did you guys have had good success since you've been there and when you were at Clinton. So how did you go about turning those programs around? What did that look like?
Yeah. So both the programs that I have taken over at Clinton and at Sand Springs, like you said, hadn't been doing well as far as wins and losses. And I basically engineered 2 turnarounds. And I think the biggest thing of that has just been culture at both places. They felt like they weren't winners. They didn't know how to win and how to lose properly. So they weren't getting a whole lot out of losses to make them better. And they just didn't know how to close out games and the mentality and the emotional state you need to be at to win games. And so I think the biggest turnaround for both of them were just working on mentally and emotionally changing their culture and how they see themselves so that they can then compete with others.
So you talked a lot about culture. What does that do for a program? What does a culture look like?
What does a culture look like? It looks like how you respond to events. It's how you carry yourself. It's what you stand for. Things that once you get done playing a team, you remember them by. How good of teammates were they? Were they loud? Were they cheering? Were they maybe in a bad culture? You see people blaming refs or the other team for cheating or whatever the case may be. It's what you stand for day in and day out, your standards you set. That's the kind of things that define your culture.
Maybe how you handle things that are out of your control. That might. What does the value of a middle school program do for a high school program? We have lots of middle school programs around this area. What do they do for their high school programs?
They make them. They give the high school a baseline. And if you can have a high baseline, you've set yourself up as a high school to be competitive. Because if you're constantly having kids come in at the 9th, 10th grade level of being their first or second year playing, I mean, you just have such a low baseline. It's hard to go up and compete at the level that most people want to without that middle school program giving you that high baseline. So I think one of the biggest downsides I see to programs is that they don't value the middle school and 9th and JV level teams like they need to set their varsity selves up, so that they can compete with some of the top schools.
So how do you prioritize your middle school teams then? If, you, like you said, having middle schools gives those kids 2 years of experience before they even get to you. So how do you make sure your middle school feels important and is being taken care of?
Kind of unpack that. You said a couple of things. How do you make them feel important? How do you kind of help build that? From what I can speak to of both places I was at, numbers was low in both places. They didn't have the want to be volleyball players. They didn't maybe even know. They just didn't know what they didn't know yet. They didn't understand the options they have, such as club and Salvation Army, and leagues now are starting to kind of pop up. They just didn't know these things. So they didn't know what options they had to better themselves. So I think the first thing is numbers. Get the numbers up. You would rather have a ton of 7th and 8th graders, almost too many on your team, and work from there rather than only take 7, 8, 9, 10 kids in 8th grade. Now you've only have 7 or 8, 9, 10 kids that have played ever prior to that 9th grade year. So the more numbers you can have, the better odds that you retain kids that want to continue the game of volleyball.
So how do you take care of those things? Because being a varsity coach obviously is very busy. Those 2 seasons run at the same time, so you can't. I guess you can. It's really hard to do both. So how do you make sure that your middle school is doing well and is taken care of and they are growing?
That's tough because I think for at least what I do is during summer where I'm not teaching and coaching at that very moment, I have more time to be with middle school and the high school. And so I can be there. I can be a support to my middle school coaches. I can, if they're gone, I can help. I can step in. I can show them a drill. I can do the things that I think help. But once it comes down to in season, it's really, you just trust your middle school coaches and you build them up, check in, try to coordinate team bonding activities maybe with both middle school and high school. Having a middle school night at a high school varsity game so that, maybe you introduce all the middle school kids, you make them feel like they're part of the program, not just part of that 7th grade team. They're part of the program. There's a lot of different aspects to that, but I think the main one is you just got to trust your middle school coaches, find good ones, and that's the first hard key to that puzzle. But you build them up like you do your kids. You got to coach the coaches and then let them coach the kids.
You've spent some time, obviously, now being a head coach, 2 different programs, like you said, provided good turnaround. What advice would you give someone stepping into their first time head coaching position? Probably maybe going into a program that has good success or maybe not. What would be some advice you would give someone who wants to be a first time head coach?
Couple things. I think one is don't be afraid to rock the boat. Just don't tip it over. As in you're going to implement new things. And anytime you have new things you're trying to do and change, any sort of change, it's always met with resistance. And so, at least at first. And so make sure what you are willing to change is what is most prioritized right then. And then incrementally change it as you go. For instance, I said, winners and losers. And so talking about mentally and emotionally, that was one of the things I prioritized first. Then I can work down the road into, maybe a certain level of GPA, maybe have these, what I call the 9, which is physical fitness kind of standards. I can implement those down the road. I don't want to just dump everything on them and try to change everything at one time because I think it rocks the boat too much and kids feel like it's turbulent rather than that they're getting somewhere. And so and parents and admin and just kind of a lot to go on with that. But don't be afraid to rock it, and don't be afraid to change what you feel is necessary. But do it in stages. I would say fundraise so that you can have the ability to get the equipment or go to camps or make them feel good by getting new jerseys. I mean, there's so many things that you can do with fundraising money that you can get rid of dues maybe. Some kids that you may turn away because they don't have the financial means to meet it, to play at least in a public school setting, I think is at least a thing for me that I want to get rid of. I don't want them to not play because they can't afford it. So fundraising is a great way to keep those kids involved and give them an experience. So fundraising, like I said, be okay with rocking the boat a little and trust your your help and your support, being your coaches, being your admin. Trust them to do their jobs and that they have your back. Don't try to have your hand in everything. Allow them to do what they want to do with the understanding that you are there to help, not to control. You're there to help and support them. Help them help you. So that would be my three things I would throw out there.
What is your favorite thing? You said, fundraising to get to do things in the summer. What's your favorite thing you've ever done with a team?
Favorite thing we've ever done? I don't. There's I guess a couple. Going to Branson team camp was awesome for the fact that it allowed for a lot of team bonding in a team that I thought really needed it. To see them have a lot of fun, to compete at the same time. It was just a really good time to get away from everything, just focus about us and volleyball and having fun and growing. Another thing was at Clinton when it was our first time to do anything in the summer. They had never done any sort of summer pride, summer workouts, anything. And to have other coaches, be like, what are you guys doing out here? Your volleyball, they don't do anything until July 15th. I'm like, well, we do now. And the girls loved it because they felt like they were now valued. They weren't a second class sport to anyone, and they wanted to work. And to see them get excited about an opportunity that they hadn't had, I think was really awesome to see.
That's super awesome. Kind of going a different direction. We're hosting a coaching clinic in July. I know we're all really excited about that. What are you most excited about hosting that clinic?
I think being able to offer local coaches that understand the local needs and be able to relate very easy to the people that will probably be coming, so that maximizes the benefit that these people will get. And to see stagnation in coaches is a tragedy, because if you're not getting better, but you're demanding the kids get better, that's quite the statement you're making. And so we as coaches need to always better ourselves, or at least look to. And here's a very affordable, local, accessible option. And so I'm excited that we are giving that opportunity to programs and to coaches to better themselves and kind of get rid of the limiting factors, like financially having to pay for 3 or 4 days in LA and fly out there and try to take multiple people. And those are all factors that keep them from getting better. And we're getting rid of those with what we're going to do.
Is there a certain session you're excited to attend? You're excited to present for? Like, what are you looking forward to?
Oof.
Which session?
Which session am I most looking forward to? leading or
Oh, either
in?
way. I know we've got basic defenses, we've got basic setting, stats, mental training.
You can't throw them all out there. I think off-season ideas and fundraising are two that I'm going to be able to give a lot of info that otherwise is neglected and is overlooked, but it can be such an integral part of a program. I think those two that I'll be leading can really help coaches take their programs to another level. I just think I never see them. I'll put it this way: I never see those type of things at other clinics that I've been to, and so I look at it as, okay, well, why are they not doing these things that most schools have to do? I mean, they have to fundraise. They need some really good off-season ideas to not just be competitive from July 15th to October. What are you doing outside of those months? Those are almost more important than those 3 or 4 months that we're playing.
Yeah.
Is to set ourselves up well. So those two I'm really looking forward to sessions wise.
All right. One last question. What is a nugget of advice you would give to any coach, brand new coach, seasoned coach? What is something that you feel is so important that you would tell any coach if they said, "Hey, what do you got for me? Give me one piece." What would you give them?
I think I would say you need to understand, and so do parents, that you guys are on the same team. At the end of the day, you want the same things. And we have to be on the same team. We have to be on a mutual understanding, being upfront. I think being proactive rather than reactive with situations can help yourself a lot, especially nowadays. Really keeping them in the loop, communicate well. And by that, I mean just keep them in the loop as far as don't have them always asking questions and not knowing what's going on. They should feel like they're comfortable with you having their kid and what is to be expected. So I think, like I said, be proactive in that you're trying to head off the problems before they can happen by being open and honest, and don't try to skirt around problems, because eventually they continue to grow. If you try to sweep them under the rug, there's only so much rug and they come to light. So you might as well handle them while they're small, take out the problem before it really grows. And that's part of being on the same team as parents. And I have so far had some amazing parents that have seen this and love it, and it helps deter any problems, and it allows us as coaches and players and parents to focus on what we need to focus on.
I mean, that's great advice, because whether you're in high school or club or middle school or college, I mean, parents are there and coaches are obviously there and players are there. So that applies at every level. So I think that's great. Well, thanks for stopping by and interviewing with us. Glad we got to know you, and we're excited to host that coaching clinic in July here in Oklahoma. So be looking out for more information on that, and we will see you guys next time.